I'm Al Martin. I'm the program coordinator for the project management program here at Sheridan College for the continuing education and professional studies faculty. And so I'm here to talk to you about that program, the project management program. And as with many projects, sometimes you run into technical difficulties. This is one of those days. And so at this point, I'm going to have to sort of prompt my slide changer to do it a little bit by Braille because I can't actually see anything on the screen. But I can pull it up on my screen. As a first step, I hope everybody is in the right spot and you're here for the right program. There are two programs at Sheridan College around project management, the continuing education program, and there is a full-time postgraduate program. So sometimes I run into people that are sort of more interested in the full-time program, and if that's the case, we'll have to redirect you. So if you're on, I'm assuming you're on the title slide. If you want to flip over to the second slide, which is labeled a fast-growing field.
Perfect. We are there.
Okay. So a couple of things for context here. Obviously, you're here from some interest level. Here's some things you may not know. Over 15 million new project management roles are created globally within this year. So there's a lot of project managers, a lot of people in the project management area. And not all have the title, and I'll talk about that a little bit more. And so when it comes to that whole opportunity, that's what Sheridan's program is all about. So whether you're an experienced manager or you're a manager who's sort of in that role, like it or not, or you're just interested in it, this program will help you learn how to manage projects and deal with all the aspects of it. If you could flip to the next slide, that would be great. So depending on your background and your experience, you can be a project manager in many diverse industries, from information technology, education, healthcare, construction, and not only technical areas, but areas like human resources, communications, marketing. I've worked with many, many marketers who manage projects all the time, sales, finance functions, all parts of the company. Basically, all organizations do projects. I usually throw in the distinction as all organizations do projects, but not all organizations do projects well. And almost anybody who's been in the working world would have experienced a project that didn't go well at some point. And, this program hopefully will allow you to develop skills to manage projects in ways that they don't go wrong or don't go as wrong. And when it does go wrong, you know how to deal with it. And the last part over on the right, it says not just project managers. It basically comes down to, there are people who are project managers that never get the title. 40% of staff and executives manage projects in addition to whatever their other full-time core responsibilities are. That's a Pricewaterhouse Cooper survey from 2014, but I could go back at any point in time and say that's true. Many people manage projects, and it's just sort of expected to wear that extra hat, but not necessarily having the background to do it yet. So with that said, I'm just going to skip to the page that talks about our certificate. So our certificate consists of 6 courses. Fundamentals of Project Management is the starting point. And then after you do the fundamentals course, the remaining courses can be taken in any order. But I usually recommend in this sequence. So you start off with the fundamentals, then you do the managing scope and time, then project human resources, stakeholder and communication management, and then managing project quality and risk, and procurement and cost, and then finally the scheduling management. Now, you can do them in any order. I always recommend at least do the first two in sequence. And then the other ones, it really doesn't matter if you shuffle them around. So if we flip to the next slide, a big aspect of this industry is PMI certifications, or certifications in general. So this is often a source of questions from people sort of getting their toes into the water here, because Sheridan's program is somewhat connected to the Project Management Institute and the PMP certification, but that connection is not always so obvious for people getting into it. So the Project Management Institute, or called PMI, they have a number of certifications. The most common one is the PMP certification. Most people who are sort of looking in this job profession will have come across that reference at some point, because it's a place employers are often looking for that qualification. There's over 1 million people in the world that have PMP certifications. And so the distinction between a PMI certification and the Sheridan certificate course is that the Sheridan certificate course is an academic program. You end up with an academic certificate in project management when you complete. The PMI certification is about experience plus education plus doing an extensive exam. So for people to actually apply to that, you have to have thousands of hours of experience doing project management work. You also have to have some formal education in project management. So you could, for instance, use one of our courses at Sheridan as that formal education. You put in an application documenting all these things, and if that application is approved, then you get the opportunity to do an exam for that certification. So many of our students are interested in that certification. Depending on how many hours of experience they have, you may not be ready to go and apply for PMI yet. Depending on sort of what work you've done and your existing educational background, you will need at least 4,500 hours to 7,500 hours of experience doing project management work in order to qualify and go through the application process. So, and as I noted in one of those other slides, many people are managing projects without the title. It doesn't necessarily mean you have to have the title. It just means you have to be doing the work a project manager would do. And that all has to be documented. So you have to have experience, and then you have to do an education piece. And any of our courses would meet that education requirement for PMI. And so people are often asking me, so ultimately, how do these two things connect? Well, many people, if you're still on the journey towards gaining all of those experience hours, will be taking our program at Sheridan and learning the things you need to know along the way as you're gathering experience. And often people will take all of our courses just so they're ready for that exam, which is a very extensive 4-hour exam. And so all our courses help you to do that. In fact, we have an exam, PMP exam prep course as well that is targeted specifically on preparing you for that exam. So hopefully that's a bunch of background that will maybe answer some people's questions. But if we're going to flip forward to the next slide, the next segment of this session would be just an opportunity to ask me questions. And I've heard most of them. I should be able to answer most of them, I think.
We do have one question here I will read to you. Having already studied project management courses at another university, would someone be exempted from the fundamentals course, or would you recommend taking the course?
Well, yes, you can apply for advanced standing, essentially, in a course. And so there's a process that we do with the Office of the Registrar. And basically, we need your transcript. We need a course outline. Then it gets evaluated to make sure that it's got at least 70% of the same content as we would have in our fundamentals course, for example. And in which case, you would have you would be given advanced standing for that course. Now, that being said, if you had taken this course at some point in the distant past, that's not very good. You need to be more current on that information. So typically within the last 3, 4, or maybe 5 years, that would be applicable. But once you go beyond that, the industry has changed, new concepts are being applied, and you'd sort of be a little bit behind in that respect. So if you need to go through that process of maybe seeing if you can get advanced standing, please contact our FCAPS, our continuing education office, and they'll get you started with that process.
Perfect, thank you. We have another question here. In terms of tracking hours, do you recommend any particular websites or applications?
No, I don't recommend any particular website or application. For instance, myself, I found somebody had an Excel spreadsheet, which I took and modified a little bit, and I used that to track my hours. And that's kind of the most flexible because part of the process, and this is specifically for PMI, part of the process is, they do audit some applications. And in the case where they audit somebody, you have to have a contact person that can validate, yes, indeed, Al did work on that project, and he did do those sorts of things. Because there's a possibility of being audited, when I went through that process myself, I captured everything in a spreadsheet, and then I reached out to all those people that could possibly be contacted and said, okay, so I'm applying for this application. Here's, and I had the spreadsheet organized by tabs. Here's the section of the spreadsheet where I documented the hours where you are referenced. And that way, if they were ever contacted, they would have that reference, because it could have been a project that was a number of years ago. And somebody might ask them, well, did Al, develop a schedule on a weekly basis or something? And, they could go and look at what I documented and say, yeah, he certainly did that sort of thing. Just as a reminder for them, not to prompt them to tell a different story than actually happened. But, this documentation does take a long period of time, and your projects can happen over up to an 8-year period. So hopefully that answers that question.
Great. And just tagging on to that question, they're wondering if there's specific information. I know you touched on this a little bit, but is there specific information they should be tracking they should be tracking or capturing if they're doing it on an Excel spreadsheet?
Well, I do suggest you go and look at the application. It's an online application at PMI, and it will show you all the categories and the detail that you have to actually track. So that would be the starting point. And you can go in there and look at it without actually I mean, you don't have to populate the whole thing before you get a picture of it. Basically, you need to track what was the project about, when did it start, when did it end. You need to track who would be the contact person, as they're referring to. And then you need to break down how many hours of work you put into each one of the potential project management tasks that you could do for a project. And if anybody happens to have a copy of the project management guide, what we call the PMBOK guide, if you were to look on page 25 of that book, that's the breakout of all the different tasks that happen, that could happen within a project. They don't always happen for every project. But basically you're tracking how many hours you put into each one of those tasks by project. So I think that should cover that need.
Perfect. Does anyone have, oh, here we have another question. If they completed the 6 courses, do we need 4.5 hours, or that may be 4,500 hours? 4,500 hours, they've clarified. If we completed the 6 courses, do we also need 4,500 hours?
Yes. You need actual experience hours doing work on projects, not just academic schooling. You do need some academic schooling as well, but you need actual experience doing this. And you know, that experience can come in, you know, different places in different ways. I mean, I have friends who've done, you know, volunteer work where they're doing event planning. And that's a project. It can be documented as a project. That counts as project management work. So even if you're not actually doing the project management work as part of your career where you're paid, you can actually accumulate some of those hours in other ways. And it takes time to get that much experience. You know, most full-time project managers, even then, that's going to be several years of experience they would have to document.
Okay, great. Another question for you. For the online courses that are being offered this fall, they would like to know if they can contact the teacher if they have any questions.
Yes, and I would say absolutely. I mean, the teacher for the online courses, I mean, the main, you know, thing that they're there for is to respond to your questions, elaborate, provide you extra help when needed. You know, in the fall, we've got 2 formats of courses. We've got an online format and what we call a virtual classroom. The virtual classroom is you have a weekly session, which, you know, for sake of argument, we'll call it a lecture that might happen on a Tuesday night. And that's an interactive session where you can talk to your instructor right there. That requires everybody in class to be there at a certain time. The online classes are what I would call asynchronous, meaning that not everybody in the class has to be online at a specific time. So you can go and, you know, consume the information you need as you have time within the week. You still have to follow a weekly schedule. But during that process of the week, you know, you're reading something and you've got a question, you reach out to the instructor. Absolutely. The first point of contact is always the email system, but then often as instructors, we'll set up separate Q&A sessions. We will talk to the students individually. Of course, we'll use email. So that most of us will create some supplemental videos to share to the class. So absolutely, the instructor is a reachable and important resource as you're taking an online course.
Perfect. Okay, continuing. These questions are great, so thank you everyone who is sending them in. We have some more here for you, Alan. Can volunteer work be counted as project management hours?
Yes. It can be. You just have to be sure to document it and make sure you've got, you know, a contact that can track it. Now, the only thing I'll say is occasionally somebody will ask me, well, you know, I organized the picnic for our family reunion. Well, I doubt PMI is going to find that one very useful because it's not a known, reachable organization that they could contact. So they would have concerns, you know, that your Uncle Bob could say, oh, yeah, sure, he did that, just to accumulate hours, even though it may not be accurate. But any volunteer organization, you know, charitable organizations, absolutely, that could count.
Great. Okay. For online courses, is all of the reading material online, or will they be required to purchase books?
Yes, you will be required to purchase books. Every course has one common reference, which is the PMBOK I referred to earlier, the Project Management Body of Knowledge. So all the courses have that as one textbook, and then most of the courses have a second textbook that you would need. Some of them are available electronically, so you can, you know, use your Kindle or whatever to get at them. In fact, I think almost all of them are. But there might be one that you'd have to actually get in paper form no matter what. But either paper or electronic, the same thing, you still need the textbook.
Okay, great. Just looking at another question here. Okay, perfect. It looks like there was a question about OSAP, but that has been answered. Does anyone else have a question for Alan about the project management program? Okay, it looks like that is all. Alan, do you have any final remarks?
Well, the only final remark I'll say is, I mean, even if you're on the fence and you're not sure if you want to look at this as a profession, certainly I always tell people anybody who works in an organization can benefit by taking a fundamentals of project management, even if you don't end up going down that path, because as I was saying earlier, all organizations do projects. Most organizations, or at least many, don't do it well. And no matter whether you continue as a career or you just end up sort of getting put on the spot occasionally as part of a different role, at some point, everyone's going to have to deal with a project. And, you know, it certainly, I think almost everyone who's ever taken the fundamentals course as a fresh face into the area always learns things and always gets impressed by the amount of benefit that planning makes in working within a project environment. So I think everybody will find it useful. I think anybody who goes into the working world should take a similar course. But I'll sort of get off my soapbox now. I think anybody would find it useful.
Well, thank you so much, Alan, for joining us today. Thank you to all of the attendees for joining us as well today. If you have any questions, we will send out a playback. As you can see that this event was recorded, so if you are interested in listening again to any of the information that Alan shared here today, you'll be able to view that. Or if you have any questions, please send us an email. My information is also going to be sent out to you, so you can contact me directly if there's anything that you think of afterwards that you maybe wish you had asked during this session. Okay, perfect. Alan, thank you so much.
Well, I'm very glad to do it. Sorry for the delay for everybody on the line.
No problem at all. I'm glad that everything worked out and you were able to join us. So thank you so much, and everyone have a great day.
All right, goodbye.
Bye.